now. Let's hit refresh. I am live. All right. So, today I just wanted to have a real short stream. This is my first time going live on YouTube, and that's kind of exciting. The thing that I wanted to mention was, or the topic I want to talk about a little bit was perspective. I've been listening to the book Anti-Fragile by Nassam Taleb, I think is his name. But it's fantastic. It's been a really interesting and engaging book, and he talks about he talks about a ton of stuff. The thing I wanted to talk about was he made a there was just one statement, and it was a quick statement. I paused it and I was thinking about it for a little bit. But the statement, I gotta remember it. Gee. It's funny how when you want to remember something, it always is the hardest. But he was talking about how causation is hidden, and that's what it was. The opacity of causation. The opacity of causation. And I was like, opacity of causation. And I was like, that's such a fitting phrase. And it made me think of, first off, opacity. Yeah, I'm a software developer, and in programming, you have like you said, opacities on things when you're dealing with the user interface, the way that it looks on the screen. And opacity is a common term, but what it means is if the how well you can see through something, so how well you can tell. And causation is sometimes opaque. Sometimes you look at a scenario and you look at a setting and you think you understand the reason that something happens, but oftentimes there's deeper reasons, and there's also reasons that are more shallow. Sometimes we assign reasons that are too deep for what actually happened. And opacity is a perfect example of how causation can be a tricky thing to determine. You can have correlation. You can have, everybody knows, like, there's correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, and that's true. The interesting thing though is causation is opaque, and what that also implies, and it's not directly obvious, but you can have multiple opacities on a certain object. You can have a certain event that happened, and you'll think, oh, this is why it happened, or oh, this is why it happened, or oh, this is why it happened, and you'll have 10 different reasons why you think it happened. But the fact is, each of those reasons contributed to it happening, or some of them did, or some of them didn't. It's very difficult to determine causation, and especially when you get into like interpersonal, like, relations and stuff like that. You get into trying to understand why people do things and what people are meaning when they say things. And there's a lot of layers there, that each of the layers can be something different, and each of the layers can contribute, but they don't always. But it's not always clear what the causation is, what caused the event or the thing. The same thing goes for the way that we view the world, like the way that our perspectives. I've talked about paradigm. That's a concept I just absolutely love. The way that you view reality and life around you, really, it changes what experience you have in life. It changes it drastically. You can have people who are going through what you would think is a fairy tale life or a fairy tale existence, and it can be an absolute hell. You can have people who are going through what you would consider an absolute hell, and it could be enjoyable based off of their perspectives, based off of their attitudes. Attitude is one of those things that our perspective, I think, reflects. Our perspective, the way we view things, it reflects our attitude on life and on reality in general. And it's one of those things that there are opacities there. There are layers there that make it more obvious or less obvious, that make it that really affect the way that the end product, the end result of what we see is, what we view and what our opinions are. The different layers really can change the way that we view things, and that's kind of that's a really interesting thing. It to me, it makes it seem far, like it brings up the importance of context. Context is so important, and context isn't everything, but the more context you can get to a situation, the better, the more clearly you can see the different layers that can bring that causation, that can bring that result. And without specific context, there may be a certain layer of that opacity, there may be a certain layer of that event or that thing that you just never will understand. And simply because you don't understand the context of it. And it's one of those things that's just really interesting, because you look at something that you think you understand so well, and you think you understand very clearly, and you think that it's, oftentimes you'll think, okay, it's simple, I understand this, and you see this in like mechanics, you see this in like software, and it's like, okay, I know what's going on, and there's some little piece that you haven't really considered how it will interact under a certain situation. And because you haven't considered that, when that happens, when that piece breaks, or when that there's an error in a certain place, everything blows up and you have no idea exactly where that comes from, simply because the context was not clear enough and was not it wasn't you didn't get enough context. And it's funny, like, and going into like a development cycle, or going into like working, you can't like, there's that balance between knowing something's done perfectly or done well and actually getting something done. The longer you take to do something well, oftentimes that the more context you could get, I guess, in this way I'm saying it, the more context you get, the longer it takes to accomplish something. And so there's a real, it's a real give take. It's a real give take, and if you do too much of one side or too much of the other, not enough of the other, then it can be a bad experience. And it, not necessarily because the idea was bad, not necessarily because the what you're trying to do is bad, but if you can't meet the software that you need, if you can't get it out in time, then it doesn't matter if it would have been perfect. You've taken too long on it, and it's no longer of value. And so it's funny, I guess, going back to like different aspects of life, the context can be, we can take too much time trying to understand all the contexts, and we can take too little time, and there's a give take and a balance. So it's important, I guess, to kind of view that as what it is. It's like, okay, well, if I'm rushing into a situation that I don't understand the context, then I need to accept the fact that maybe I'm making bad assumptions, or maybe I'm understanding the situation not correctly, because those layers of opacity aren't clear enough to me, and I don't know what I'm missing. You don't know what you don't know. Well, it was interesting that causation is causation. Yeah, I forget how he said it. He said it in a very elegant way. It was the opacity of causation, I think, is what he said. But that's a cool description for that. Um, and that's all. Well, have a great night and have a great day. And everybody, you guys rock the party. All right, bye.